All right, so President Tinubu has announced Vice President Kashim Shettima as his running mate for the 2027 election. Well, that has ended months of speculation, because obviously there was a lot of speculation around if Tinubu was going to change Shettima and put, say, maybe a Christian candidate. Obviously, the Muslim ticket of the last election raised a lot of eyebrows, and in spite of that, he still won the election, right? And everyone probably just thought that this time around, knowing the terrain already, he may want to then go for a Christian candidate. Of course, that was not the only motivation actually that fueled the speculation. And if you guys remember, last year when this whole Christian genocide started, one of the reasons the US, was very hard on the Christian genocide narrative was that they had even mentioned that the president was Muslim, the vice president was Muslim, most of the security chiefs were Muslims, the speaker of the House of Rep was Muslim. Like, so they felt that the Muslims obviously had control of the country, and perhaps that is why they were not necessarily giving as much attention to the cries from the Christians that they were being targeted, right? And in fact, if you remember during that period, that was when Christopher Musa was then retired was it the chief of army staff, and then reappointed as the minister of defense. Obviously, he's Christian, and that also gave some sort of, I guess, reassurance to the Americans that the president is not afraid of Christians or whatever, right? So that definitely happened, and obviously the Christian genocide thing definitely sort of, like I said, fueled that speculation. If you remember, again, one of the excuses that the US gave, with this whole Christian genocide was that they were going to come into the country if Christians, if there was continuous killing of Christians. And yes, they came to the country December 25th, or was it 26th of 2025. And obviously their coming was almost like an admittance by the Tinubu government that indeed there was an issue that needed to be solved, even though the Tinubu government obviously sort of leaned more towards an insecurity narrative rather than a Christian genocide issue, right? So the Tinubu government focused on, oh, we have a security problem and we need help, right? But the American government obviously said, for us to come to your country, we are coming because there's a targeted attack on Christians, and that is why we are coming to the country. And obviously they came with the authorization of the Nigerian government. And why am I bringing this up? It's because a lot of people are already suggesting that this Muslim ticket may not necessarily favor Tinubu this time around. And why is that? Because some Northerners believe that, you know, they sort of believe that the US coming into the country, coming to support Nigeria, was more or less an admittance by the Tinubu administration that, Muslims, or should I say Christians, were being targeted by, Islamic terrorists, right? And essentially, this is more like, oh, okay, what's that supposed to mean? Considering the fact that the reason why we voted you in was because you chose a Muslim candidate, a Muslim vice president. Well, one of the reasons. So I guess to some people it felt like a betrayal, you know, an admittance, even though they also claim that Muslims are also being killed. This wasn't anything close to, Christian genocide. Muslims were also being killed, and this has nothing to do with a Christian genocide or anything. But US came, they threw bombs here and there. In fact, on that day, I think the second day, Sokoto, there are some parts of Sokoto where the bomb landed, where some of the residents said that there was no terrorist amongst them, and the bomb actually affected some civilians. But that is debatable, right? And that's not even where we are going. What the conversation here is that some Northerners believe that the cooperation of the US and the Nigerian government in fighting terrorists was almost an admittance that indeed there was actually a Christian genocide going on, owing to the fact that the US government had mentioned that the reason they were going to come into the country was to protect Christians, right? All right. So that's one reason why some people felt the Muslim ticket would not fly again, simply because the the Nigerian government had more or less betrayed the North. And some other people in the North, because don't forget, the North is like, this is the region that got excited about the Muslim ticket in the last election. Some individuals in the North are already saying that the Tinubu government has really dealt with the North. One of the reasons they pointed to was farmers. So apparently, Tinubu opened, the borders to rice importation, to food importation generally, when there was very high cost of food items, especially like rice and some of these other items. And this obviously affected farmers adversely, especially northern farmers. Right, a lot of northern farmers who had collected loans, who had collected um, yes, who had collected grants, more or less, they are collected loans to fund their operations, are now having to compete with, foreign goods that are obviously subsidized by those foreign governments, right? And those goods essentially just wiped out their business. So a lot of northern farmers, northern stakeholders in the agri businesses were, in fact, till now, they are still sort of angry about this development, right? So some people felt, in terms of you know agriculture and their livelihood, Tinubu actually sort of eroded their livelihood, and because of that, they are also angry, right? There's also the perception that um what's it called, appointments are skewed to the Lagos side of things, right? Obviously, the North, in the last 2 years, this has been a very big issue with them. They feel like the appointment has been very skewed. Tinubu has been very nepotistic in his appointment. They feel like the North has barely gets any appointments from the Tinubu government, and hence why they also feel the Tinubu government, i.e., the Muslim ticket that they all rallied against, behind, did not favor them. And also, there's also the perceived persecution of northern leaders, right? For example, sometime in 2025 or 2024, Professor Usman Yusuf was arrested for some of his utterances. Um, Malam Nasir Rufai has been in detention for over 3 months now, again, owing by his criticisms of this government, and so on and so forth. There's been numerous, northern influential figures that have been targeted. We had the Malami case as well. So a lot of northerners also feel like, the Tinubu government has been targeting influential northern figures who are against him. And obviously, they feel like this is, you know, a travesty. In fact, those northern figures are also Muslim. So to them, they're like, okay, so what is exactly the point of this Muslim ticket if it has not really benefited us the way we wanted it to? Right? Obviously, there's also the infrastructural conversation about, around, okay, so what exactly is being done in the country, how much is coming to the north in terms of, infrastructure financing, and they feel like most of this funding are going to the southeast, to the southwest, and especially Lagos. So a lot of these, the issues surrounding, the president choosing a Muslim ticket in the first time, which obviously helped him, and a lot of Northerners sort of rallied behind that ticket, seem to have eroded as we speak, right? And interestingly, a lot of names have been, mentioned as possible replacements for Shettima. Uh, they mentioned someone like the current Minister of Defense, which is the General C. Musa, right? They also mentioned, interestingly, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, who I'm not sure is an APC. I'm not sure he's an APC supporter, but his name also was dropped. And they also mentioned Yakubu Dogara, who was the previous Speaker of the House of Assembly representative. And, well, the president said, no, I, I, that is not who I'm thinking about. We heard so many rumors about issues in Shettima, Shettima be feeling left behind, and there was also the rumor that he was blamed for the whole Christian genocide narrative, because don't forget, this whole Christian genocide sort of exploded after his engagement at the UN, when he gave that rousing speech about Israel's, should I say, high-handedness in the war with Pakistan, or Palestine. I don't even know, whatever. So you know, this is part of what has fueled this speculation. But the president just few days ago decided to, kill this speculation. I mean, he had to, because there was a deadline for INEC, and he had to mention or name his running mate. So let's see how this goes. What do you guys think? Do you think the Muslim ticket is still a factor going into 2027? Do you think the North, especially with Atiku now the candidate of the ADC, would back Tinubu's Muslim ticket against Atiku's ticket, right? So how would this play out, guys? Do you think that the Muslim ticket has actually benefited the North in this dispensation, or it was a gamble that left them biting their fingers? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and see you guys later.